If you are a Detroit Red Wings fan, I have a simple question for you. Are you okay? That's not even to say that Red Wings fans shouldn't be okay. But in today's video, we're going to do a deep dive into the NHL playoffs, what it would take to actually qualify for this event, where the Detroit Red Wings are currently at, and what their strength of schedule could potentially do to these chances. Right now, the Detroit Red Wings have a 74.2% chance at making the dance. That's not a guarantee, but it's pretty darn good. Especially when you look at where the Detroit Red Wings were the past 10 years. 74.2% at the beginning of March would be seen as a really good year by most Red Wings fans if you were to isolate that. In fact, the Wings have a better chance at making the playoffs than the Boston Bruins do, than the Edmonton Oilers do, than the Ottawa Senators do. Some of these teams have been playoff teams consistently the past few years, so I'd say Detroit is in a pretty good spot. But the issue is, Detroit's 74.2 was actually decently higher earlier in the year. As we've noted, with injuries to Dylan Larkin and a bunch of losing going on as of late, it is starting to open the door to a Detroit fallout. The Wings were one of the top teams in the National Hockey League in terms of overall points. They were top 5, top 6, but now they've dropped down to a tie for number 8. The interesting thing is, you have Detroit, New York, and Pittsburgh all in here. Boston is number 11th, but the fact is, this Eastern Conference is getting so tight that all these teams are taking up the playoff spots. Columbus is 73 points. They're 2 points out of a wild card at the moment. Detroit is in a wild card, despite the fact that they are one of the top teams in the league. If you just go by points, they are still 8th overall. It's a really tight league. The Red Wings, with a loss the other night, they have themselves a game later today against the New Jersey Devils. We'll wait and see whether or not they're able to get a 2-point marker there. But the Red Wings are 3-5-2 in their last 10. That is not ideal for a team that wants to hold on to this playoff spot. They are at a -4 goal differential, which is the only negative number for any of these teams that are in an Eastern Conference playoff spot right now. If you go over to the West, it's a little different. I mean, Anaheim has a -6, and they're number 1 in the Pacific. For whatever reason, yeah, the Pacific is so weak this year, so it's very difficult to compare. But the Red Wings still have themselves a decent 74% odds at making the dance. The point I want to make in this video here, though, is the fact that the Red Wings may actually have a much harder time maintaining this 74% and turning it into 100% compared to some of these other teams. Take a look at Tankathon.com and check out the NHL's strength of schedule list. Essentially, if you're high up here, it means you've got some tough opponents, but if you're all the way at the bottom, it means you're playing some pretty easy teams. LA, Anaheim, Colorado, these are all Western teams. It makes sense because, hey, a lot of these Western teams kind of suck, so if you're going to be playing Western teams mostly for the end of the season, then yeah, you'll have an easier schedule than some of the guys out east. However, the Florida Panthers, they have themselves a fairly easy schedule to end things off, as do the Rangers, the Jersey Devils, the Blues, the Oilers. But the Red Wings have the 7th most difficult schedule to end off this season. Toughest opponents they're going to play include the Dallas Stars, the Lightning, they're going to get Tampa Bay twice. They got the Minnesota Wild, Buffalo Sabres, Montreal Canadiens, and Pittsburgh Penguins once at a time. And then for some of the easier teams, they've got the Philly Flyers 3 times, the Devils twice, Florida twice. They actually do have the New Jersey Devils later today, so again, we'll see what happens at that point. But all's that to say is that when you compare Detroit to some of these other teams that they're competing for playoff spots with, Thankfully, Boston actually has one of the most difficult schedules in the league, along with Pittsburgh and Columbus. But, for example, the Islanders, they're down here at 15th. They're smack dab in the middle right there. There are teams above the Detroit Red Wings that have easy schedules too, like the Buffalo Sabres. They are tied for first in the Atlantic with Tampa Bay, and the Buffalo Sabres are down here at 17th with their strength of schedule. It's not going to be easy if the Detroit Red Wings are going to want to hold on to any sort of a top Atlantic spot. Montreal is also listed as a sort of difficult team to end off the year, but their schedule is a tad easier than Detroit's. So this is going to be yet another obstacle for the Wings, despite the fact that they don't have Dylan Larkin. Let's go out there and take a look at some other stats too. This is also on moneypuck.com. This is not their playoff odds, but I wanted to take a look at some of these extra statistical breakdowns that we can take a look at here, including expected goal differential, this category right here. The Detroit Red Wings are 19th in the NHL when it comes to expected goal differential. What that means is that based off of the expected goals that are being counted, chances that should turn into goals, chances that get saved or whatever, but they're good enough to actually count as an expected goal, the Detroit Red Wings are technically getting outplayed. They're in the bottom half of the league with a minus 4.64. This means that based off of the quality they have played throughout the course of the season, they have given up more chances that should have been goals. Whether they were goals or not, that's irrelevant. It's just an expected goal versus the amount of expected goals they have actually generated. Expected goals against is over here. Technically, the best defensive team in the NHL is Ottawa. They only have 101 expected goals against. But the Detroit Red Wings are 18th overall in this metric. Now, when you look at expected goals for, you would see that the Red Wings did have themselves a pretty good number, but it's still only good enough for 17th in the league. The Red Wings are not scoring as much as they probably should be if you wanted to be considered a bona fide playoff team, and they're allowing too many expected goals against. Now, never mind my Vancouver Canucks being the number one team in the NHL in expected goals against by far. Not number one in terms of how good they are, but number one in terms of, wow, they are really letting in a lot of playing time and opportunities and pucks. Detroit is smack dab in the middle there. Their goals for above expected number is also one of the worst in the league, which essentially means here that they're not scoring more than they should be, by a lot. The number one team here is Montreal, which means that they're actually scoring a lot more goals than they probably should based off of the expectation of the shots and the chances that they have. Essentially, if you're lucky, you will end up at the top of this list over here. But for the Detroit Red Wings, I mean, they can't convert as much as they probably should be when looking at chances that don't have good enough opportunities to become goals. That's a weird way to look at it, but they are 30th out of 32 in the National Hockey League. Only Calgary and New Jersey are worse. So all's this to say is that the Detroit Red Wings, despite the fact that they do have a 74.2% chance to making the Stanley Cup playoffs, nothing is guaranteed here, man. Nothing. They're going on a pretty bad losing streak. They just lost out on Dylan Larkin. Who knows if he comes back? If he comes back today, then okay, that'd be awesome. But the numbers, the team stats, the advanced analytics, a lot of these don't actually look like they're working in Detroit's favor. And I wonder how worried you are, if you're a Red Wings fan, to hear about this. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. The Wings play the Devils later today at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. I hope you enjoyed this video. Sign on, and bye.